Good morning and welcome to America's Home Cooking. Today I am going to talk about how long you can freeze things in the freezer. Some things I don't freeze and some things I do. So I have a book to keep all this straight for me. Okay, if you're going to freeze butter, it will last anywhere up to 7 months. Now if you can butter, you can last up to 5 years that I've heard. All right, margarine I don't use, but they say it can last up to a year in the freezer. All right, I would never ever in a million years freeze cheese, so I'm going to bypass that completely. Now cream, they say you can can it. I mean, you can freeze it. I don't freeze my creams. All kinds. What I do is I can heavy cream and I make the other creams. But if you wish to buy it and can it, it'll only, not can it, freeze it. If you wish to freeze cream, it'll only last 2 months. I prefer canning. It could last up to a year, so I have no problems with that. Now, I've tried freezing eggs. They're not the greatest frozen because the yolk doesn't seem to come back. It sort of separates at that. But they said you can do whole whites and yolks if you like to separate them and all, and they'll last up to 12 months in the freezer. All right? Now, fish. Oh, I love fish, doing it. The fatty ones like perch and salmon and mackerel, they'll last up to 3 months in the freezer. They're leaner like cod, flounder, haddock, sole. They last up to 6 months. I'll even show you how you're supposed to freeze them. There's a special way you do it. Fruit juices, I wouldn't do it and freeze fruit. I wouldn't do this. But if you wish to freeze, they said fruit and fruit juices, except citrus, will last up to 12 months. And citrus fruits and juices will only last up to 6 months. I would not freeze them, I'm sorry. Oh, ice cream and sherbets, 2 months. I think we all like that. And it never lasts 2 months in the freezer. Now, this is the one that I'm always into, or are the meats more. And I only use the butter. I'll freeze fish, but I never freeze my creams, my cheeses, or my fruits, though they say you can, and I gave you that. Now, in the meats, you can freeze bacon up to a month. They say not to freeze frankfurters. Honey, I've done it. Okay, they would never last longer than 2 months in my freezer. Okay, luncheon meat, do not freeze. All right. Now, if you have ground beef or lamb, they can last up to 3 months. Ground pork can last up to 2 months, and ham can last up to a month. Now, they say you can freeze milk up to a month, but I can my milk, and it lasts over a year. All right, so I usually freeze it in November sometime or December. I'll can it. I don't freeze it, I'm sorry. I'm reading two things. I can my milk towards the end of November or into December, and it'll carry me through the winter. So that's a good time that I like to can my milk, and it's excellent cooking with it, no problems. Now, roast, if it's beef, it can last up to a month. If it's lamb or veal, this is all freezing now, is 9 months, and pork can only go up to 6 months. Now, if you have steaks, okay, up comes the brows, we all like those, and chops. Beef will last 12 months, lamb will last 9 months, veal will last 4 months. Now we're going to go to the poultry, which is chicken, turkey, duck, and stuff like that. All right, if it's a whole chicken or a turkey, you can freeze it up to 12 months. Goose or a duck lasts 6 months. Now if you cut it up, they say 9 months for the chicken, and turkey 6 months. Now giblets, they say 3 months. All right, now these are all freezing times. But I do tell you on some of the cannings, when I can, I'd rather can it than freeze it. All right, I told you can freeze bread. Yes, you can, up to 3 months. Might never last longer than 6 weeks, okay? I would not do this, but they say you can if you make your own cakes. You can freeze them up to 3 months. I would not do that. I strongly recommend it. Casseroles, if you make a meat, fish, or poultry. My mother used to make TV dinners, and with their light casseroles, they would last up to 3 months, okay? Now she says cookies that are baked and unbaked 3 months, I would not do it, all right? But she says you can. Pies, if it's unbaked fruit, you can do it up to 3 months. That too, I would not do. Vegetables, if home frozen, 10 months. If you purchase them, they're only going to last 8 months because they already have part of their shelf life used. So it has a shorter one if you buy it in the store, but if you do it yourself, you have more time. You have 10 months to freeze. This I would never ever do either. She says, though you can freeze yogurt, plain yogurt 1 month, flavored yogurts 5 months. Okay, but some of this I would never. Me personally, I would never freeze yogurt. I don't use margarine. Cheese, no. Creams, I'd rather canned. Eggs, no. There's a better way. If you have chickens and you don't wash off the lining on it, I've heard that they can last out on the counter for months, so you don't have to worry about that. Fruit juices, I'd rather can than freeze. Now see, if it's orange juice or grapefruit juice that I make, I'll freeze those, okay? But the other ones I wouldn't freeze, okay? And milk, I do not freeze either. I would rather can it. But that is the time frames that go on for freezing foods, okay? I promised you that I would give you this information. Now I'll tell you how my mother and I used to do it. You get freezer wrap, that's what you need. And you'll notice it's like a wax on one side and on the other side is like a paper. What you do is you take the meat that you buy at the store, you take it out and you wrap it up in this freezer wrap, and you use simple paper tape, works great. Tape it closed, just wrap it up and seal it. You write what it is, the date you stick it in the freezer, and how much it weighs. Because believe you me, I learned the hard way. I had packed some stuff up and I didn't put how much it weighed. I had the date, I got the date down, I got that, but I had forgotten to put the weight on it. And I did not know how much everything was. My husband had to get me a scale. So that's how we used to freeze our meat. And this is deep freezing. Though this one just says at 0 temperature. Deep freeze, my mother would freeze. I knew we had food for up to a year. She had a big freezer. And when she went to the butcher and she ordered, and she had ranchers growing cattle for her, and the chickens and poultries and all. When they went to the slaughterhouse, which is usually, this is where the meats come in the autumn, because this is when the slaughterhouses get really busy. My mother's meat and stuff would be ready for her, and she would tell them how she wanted it cut up, but they would just put it in, I want to call it brown paper, but it's not. It's paper they put in, but we would have to come home with all of that. We'd have to weigh it, date it, and wrap it up, freezer wrap instead, and get it into the freezer. So we always had a lot of food. It was in a big deep freezer. So she says just at 0 degrees, but my mother did it at a deep freeze. So that's pretty much how things were done. So if you see something on sale and you said, oh, I didn't put it on my list or something, or you have meat in there, they have expirations, but it stretches on that. So if you date them, you've got time with them. Like sometimes I'll see cuts and I leave them in the freezer for 6 weeks, sometimes 4 months and stuff, and I'll pull it out later. But because it was on sale, I pick it up because it's a good price, because if you buy it when it's not on sale, you're out extra money. I'll wrap them up and stick them in the freezer and date them and leave them there. And that's what I do. So my freezer always has food in it and is always being rotated in that way. But you can freeze fish and meats and butters. I mean, I like to keep 8 to 9 pounds of butter. I know a woman who has 30 pounds of butter. 30 pounds, that's a lot of butter. Anyway, that's what she's done. But some of that stuff I would not freeze. I would rather can it, okay? So listen, take care. I hope this information helps you. Helps you in your shopping and helps you to understand, how to do it, and that you can buy these cuts, though you don't have it planned for this week. You can stick it in the freezer, date it, weigh it, and you know what you have. Okay? Bye-bye.